In a small town, there was a modest-looking bank that served the local community. The bank was always busy, with customers coming in and out, and the staff working hard to manage their tasks. Among the employees were a few younger workers who often joked around and sometimes made fun of customers behind their backs. They thought it was harmless fun, never considering how their words might affect others. One morning, an elderly man walked into the bank. He was dressed simply, in worn-out clothes and old shoes. His appearance was unassuming, and he carried a small, tattered bag. The man moved slowly, his steps careful and deliberate, as if he were carrying the weight of many years. He approached the counter, where one of the younger employees was stationed. The employee, distracted by a conversation with a coworker, barely glanced at the man and handed him a form to fill out. As the old man sat down to complete the form, the younger employees began whispering among themselves. They chuckled at his outdated clothes and mocked the way he held his pen, struggling to write. They assumed he was just another ordinary customer, someone who didn't deserve their attention or respect. Little did they know, their assumptions were about to be shattered. The old man, unfazed by their behavior, quietly finished the form and handed it back. He thanked the employee with a gentle smile, his eyes kind but knowing. The employee, still amused by the earlier jokes, barely acknowledged him and quickly moved on to the next customer. The old man lingered for a moment, observing the bank's operations, before slowly making his way out. Later that day, the bank staff received an unexpected announcement. A senior executive from the bank's headquarters was coming for an unannounced visit. The employees were nervous, scrambling to make sure everything was in order. They straightened their ties, adjusted their name tags, and prepared to impress the important guest. When the door opened, everyone turned to see who it was. To their shock, it was the same old man they had mocked earlier. He walked in with confidence, his simple clothes replaced by a sharp suit. The room fell silent as he introduced himself. He was the CEO of the bank. The employees' faces turned pale, their earlier laughter now replaced with dread. They realized their mistake, but it was too late. The old man's calm demeanor only made the situation more unsettling, as he began to address the room. The CEO stood at the front of the bank, his presence commanding the room. The employees, who had been so quick to judge him earlier, now stood frozen, unsure of what to do or say. The air was thick with tension, and the silence was deafening. The CEO's eyes scanned the room, taking in the faces of the staff who had mocked him just hours ago. His expression was calm, but there was a quiet intensity in his gaze that made everyone uncomfortable. He began to speak, his voice steady and measured. "Good afternoon," he said, his tone neither angry nor accusatory. "I've been observing this branch for some time now. Today, I decided to see things for myself." He paused, letting his words sink in. The employees exchanged nervous glances, their earlier confidence completely gone. They had no idea how much he had seen or heard, and the uncertainty only added to their anxiety. The CEO continued, "I've always believed that a bank is more than just a place for transactions. It's a place where people come for help, for trust, and for respect. Every customer, no matter how they look or where they come from, deserves to be treated with dignity." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that hit everyone in the room. The younger employees who had mocked him earlier felt a pang of guilt, realizing how wrong they had been. One of the employees, trying to salvage the situation, stepped forward and stammered, "Sir, we didn't know it was you. We're so sorry for how we acted earlier." The CEO looked at him, his expression softening slightly. "It's not about me," he replied. "It's about how you treat every person who walks through that door. Today, it was me. Tomorrow, it could be someone else, a struggling parent, a hardworking farmer, or a retired teacher. They all deserve the same respect." The room fell silent again as the CEO's words echoed in their minds. He didn't raise his voice or scold them, but his message was clear. The employees felt a deep sense of shame, realizing how their actions had fallen short of the values the bank stood for. The CEO's calm demeanor only made the lesson more impactful, as it showed that true leadership isn't about power or authority, it's about setting an example. Before leaving, the CEO added, "I hope today serves as a reminder for all of us. Let's strive to be better, not just as employees, but as human beings." With that, he turned and walked out, leaving the staff to reflect on their behavior. The bank, once filled with whispers and laughter, was now filled with quiet introspection. After the CEO left, the bank felt different. The usual chatter and laughter among the employees were replaced by an uneasy silence. The younger workers, who had been so quick to mock the old man earlier, now avoided eye contact with each other. They were embarrassed and ashamed, their earlier confidence replaced by a heavy sense of guilt. The CEO's words had struck a chord, and they couldn't shake the feeling that they had failed not just him, but themselves. One of the employees, a young man who had been particularly vocal in his earlier jokes, sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen without really seeing it. His mind was racing, replaying the events of the day. He thought about how casually he had judged the CEO based on his appearance, and how wrong he had been. It wasn't just about the CEO, it was about the way he had treated other customers in the past, too. He realized that this wasn't the first time he had made fun of someone behind their back, and the realization made him uncomfortable. Another employee, a woman who had joined in the laughter earlier, found herself thinking about her own behavior. She remembered times when she had dismissed customers who seemed less important or less wealthy, focusing only on those she thought could bring in more business. The CEO's words about treating every customer with respect echoed in her mind, and she felt a pang of regret. She had always prided herself on being good at her job, but now she wondered if she had been missing the bigger picture. As the day went on, the mood in the bank remained somber. Customers came and went, but the employees were more attentive and polite than usual. They smiled more, listened more carefully, and went out of their way to help. It was as if the CEO's visit had reminded them of why they were there in the first place, to serve the community, not to judge it. By the end of the day, the employees gathered in the break room, something they rarely did. No one said much at first, but eventually, one of them broke the silence. "I think we all learned something today," he said quietly. The others nodded, their faces serious. They knew they had been given a second chance, and they didn't want to waste it. As they left the bank that evening, each employee carried with them a sense of responsibility. The CEO's visit had been a wake-up call, and they were determined to do better. They didn't know if they would ever see him again, but they knew one thing for sure, they would never forget the lesson he had taught them. The next morning, the bank employees arrived at work with a renewed sense of purpose. The events of the previous day had left a lasting impression, and they were determined to make changes. The young man who had been at the center of the mocking incident arrived early, his usual swagger replaced by a quiet humility. He greeted his co-workers with a nod, his usual jokes absent. The atmosphere in the bank was different, lighter, yet more focused. It was as if everyone had silently agreed to do better. As the day began, the employees went about their tasks with more care and attention. They greeted every customer with a genuine smile, no matter how they were dressed or how much money they seemed to have. The young man who had mocked the CEO found himself going out of his way to help an elderly woman who was struggling to fill out a form. He patiently guided her through the process, something he would have rushed through just a day earlier. When she thanked him with a warm smile, he felt a sense of satisfaction he hadn't experienced in a long time. Meanwhile, the woman who had joined in the laughter the previous day found herself paying closer attention to a young couple who came in to open a savings account. They were nervous and unsure, and she took the time to explain everything clearly, reassuring them and making them feel comfortable. As she watched them leave, relieved and grateful, she realized how rewarding it felt to truly help someone. The change in the employees' attitudes didn't go unnoticed. Customers began to comment on how friendly and helpful the staff had become. One regular customer, an older man who had been coming to the bank for years, even remarked, "I don't know what's different, but it feels like this place has a new energy." The employees smiled, knowing exactly what had changed but choosing to keep the story of the CEO's visit to themselves. As the days turned into weeks, the bank became a more welcoming place. The employees started to take pride in their work, not just as bankers but as members of the community. They began to see their customers as people with stories, struggles, and dreams, rather than just numbers on a screen. The young man who had once been quick to judge found himself forming genuine connections with the people he served, and he realized how much he had been missing by focusing on appearances. The CEO's visit had been a turning point, not just for the employees but for the bank as a whole. It was a reminder that true success isn't measured by profits or numbers, but by the impact you have on the people around you. And as the employees continued to grow and learn, they knew they had the CEO to thank for showing them the way. Weeks passed, and the bank's transformation continued. The employees had not only changed their behavior but also their mindset. They began to take pride in their work, not just as individuals but as a team. The young man who had once been at the center of the mocking incident found himself mentoring new employees, sharing the lessons he had learned. He spoke about the importance of treating everyone with respect, regardless of their appearance or background. His co-workers listened, knowing he spoke from experience. One afternoon, as the bank was winding down for the day, a familiar face walked through the door. It was the CEO. This time, he was dressed in his usual sharp suit, but his presence no longer carried the same shock as before. The employees recognized him immediately, and instead of fear, they felt a sense of gratitude. They had worked hard to change, and they hoped he would notice. The CEO greeted the staff with a warm smile, his eyes scanning the room. He could feel the difference in the atmosphere, the genuine smiles, the attentive service, the sense of camaraderie among the employees. He approached the counter, where the young man who had mocked him weeks ago was assisting a customer. The young man looked up, surprised but composed. "Good afternoon, sir," he said respectfully, his tone sincere. The CEO nodded, his expression kind. "Good afternoon. It's good to see you again." The young man felt a wave of relief at the CEO's calm demeanor. He finished helping the customer and then turned to the CEO. "Sir, I just want to say, thank you. Your visit that day was a wake-up call for all of us. We've been trying to do better, and I hope you've noticed." The CEO smiled, his eyes reflecting a quiet pride. "I have noticed," he said. "And I'm proud of the changes you've made. It's not easy to admit mistakes and grow from them, but you've done just that. That's what true strength looks like." The employees gathered around, listening intently. The CEO's words meant more to them than any praise or reward. They had worked hard to change not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The CEO's visit had shown them the importance of humility and respect, and they were determined to carry those values forward. Before leaving, the CEO addressed the group one last time. "Remember, the way you treat people defines not just who you are, but what this bank stands for. Keep up the good work." With that, he left, leaving behind a team that was stronger, kinder, and more united than ever before. The employees knew they still had a long way to go, but they were ready for the journey. The CEO's second visit left a lasting impact on the bank's employees. His words of encouragement fueled their determination to continue improving, not just in their work but in their attitudes toward others. The young man who had once been quick to judge now found himself becoming a role model for his co-workers. He took the initiative to organize team meetings where they discussed ways to better serve their customers and support one another. The bank, once a place of casual jokes and superficial interactions, was now a hub of genuine care and professionalism. One day, a new customer walked into the bank, a middle-aged man dressed in simple, worn-out clothes. He looked nervous, clutching a small bag tightly to his chest. The young man, now more observant and empathetic, noticed the man's discomfort and approached him with a warm smile. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you today?" he asked, his tone kind and welcoming. The man hesitated, glancing around as if unsure whether he belonged. I need to open an account," he said quietly. The young man nodded and guided him to a seat, patiently explaining the process. As they worked through the paperwork, the man began to relax, sharing bits of his story. He had recently lost his job and was starting over, trying to rebuild his life. The young man listened intently, offering words of encouragement and reassurance. When the process was complete, the man thanked him, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You've been so kind," he said. "I was afraid I'd be judged for how I look, but you treated me with respect. Thank you." The young man smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He realized that this was what the CEO had been trying to teach them, that every person who walked through the door had a story, and it was their job to listen and help. Meanwhile, the woman who had once dismissed less important customers found herself going out of her way to assist a young couple who were struggling to understand their mortgage options. She took the time to explain everything in detail, answering their questions with patience and care. When the couple left, relieved and grateful, she felt a sense of pride she hadn't experienced before. She was no longer just doing her job, she was making a difference in people's lives. The bank's transformation didn't go unnoticed by the community. Word spread about the friendly and helpful staff, and more people began to visit, not just for banking services but for the welcoming atmosphere. The employees, once focused on their own tasks, now worked together as a team, supporting each other and their customers. They had learned that true success wasn't about appearances or profits, it was about the impact they had on the people around them. And as they continued to grow, they knew they owed it all to the lesson their CEO had taught them. As the weeks turned into months, the bank's reputation continued to grow. Customers praised the staff for their kindness and professionalism, and the employees themselves felt a renewed sense of pride in their work. The young man who had once mocked the CEO now found himself leading by example, inspiring his coworkers to treat every customer with the same respect and care. He had come a long way from the person he used to be, and he was grateful for the change. One afternoon, as the bank was bustling with activity, a letter arrived addressed to the entire staff. It was from the CEO. The employees gathered around as the branch manager opened it and read it aloud. The letter was filled with praise for their hard work and dedication. The CEO wrote about how proud he was of the changes they had made and the positive impact they were having on the community. He also announced that he would be visiting the branch again soon to personally thank them for their efforts. The employees were thrilled. The CEO's words meant the world to them, and they felt a sense of accomplishment knowing that their efforts had not gone unnoticed. They worked even harder in the days leading up to his visit, determined to show him how much they had grown. When the day of the CEO's visit finally arrived, the bank was filled with a sense of excitement and anticipation. The employees greeted him with genuine smiles and warm welcomes, their earlier nervousness replaced by confidence. The CEO took his time speaking with each of them, listening to their stories and sharing his own. He was impressed by the changes he saw and the positive atmosphere in the bank. During his visit, the CEO also took the time to speak with some of the customers. He wanted to see for himself the impact the employees were having on the community. The customers spoke highly of the staff, praising their kindness and willingness to go the extra mile. One customer, an elderly woman, even tearfully thanked the CEO for having such wonderful employees who had helped her during a difficult time. As the visit came to an end, the CEO gathered the employees for a final word. "You have all done an incredible job," he said, his voice filled with pride. "You have not only transformed this bank but also the lives of the people you serve. Remember, true success is not about how much money you make, but about the difference you make in the world. Keep up the great work." With that, the CEO left, leaving behind a team that was more united and motivated than ever before. The employees knew they had come a long way, but they also knew that their journey was far from over. They were ready to continue growing, learning, and making a difference, one customer at a time. The CEO's final visit marked a new chapter for the bank and its employees. His words of encouragement and pride stayed with them, serving as a constant reminder of the values they had embraced. The young man who had once been quick to judge now found himself mentoring new hires, sharing the lessons he had learned about humility, respect, and the importance of treating everyone with dignity. He had become a leader, not by title, but by example. The bank continued to thrive, not just in terms of business but in its connection to the community. Customers felt valued and respected, and many of them became loyal patrons, spreading the word about the exceptional service they received. The employees, once focused on their individual tasks, now worked together as a close-knit team, supporting one another and their customers with genuine care. One day, a local newspaper published an article about the bank, highlighting its transformation and the positive impact it was having on the community. The article praised the staff for their dedication and kindness, and it even mentioned the CEO's visits as a turning point. The employees felt a deep sense of pride as they read the article, knowing that their hard work had made a difference. The young man who had once mocked the CEO kept a copy of the article on his desk as a reminder of how far he had come. He often reflected on the lessons he had learned and the person he had become. He knew that the journey wasn't always easy, but it was worth it. He had discovered a sense of purpose and fulfillment that he had never known before. As time went on, the bank became more than just a place of business, it became a pillar of the community. The employees organized events to support local causes, from food drives to financial literacy workshops. They were no longer just bankers, they were neighbors, friends, and helpers. The CEO, though no longer a regular visitor, remained a source of inspiration for the staff. His lessons about respect, humility, and the importance of serving others had become the foundation of the bank's culture. The employees knew that they owed their success not just to their hard work, but to the values he had instilled in them. In the end, the story of the bank and its employees was a testament to the power of change. It showed that no matter where you start, you have the ability to grow, learn, and make a difference. The employees had transformed not just their workplace, but themselves, and in doing so, they had touched the lives of countless people. And as they looked to the future, they knew that their journey was far from over, they were ready to keep growing, one step at a time.